there any relevance of native speaker norms? That's a question for TEFlologists. Is it better to focus on form or to focus on forms? That's a question for TEFlologists. If you use a textbook, is your classroom authentic, or should your approach be more learner-centric? From feedback to learner autonomy, we'll discuss it all on TEFlology.
Welcome back to the TEFlology Podcast, a podcast all about teaching English as a foreign language and related matters. Today we bring you our second of 4 episodes recorded as part of our Diversity Through Interaction Forum at the 2018 JALT conference. In this episode, I spoke to featured conference speaker Dat Bao. Dr. Dat Bao is a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Education at Monash University, Melbourne, Australia. His research interests include curriculum development, world-related learning, intercultural education, and creative pedagogy in language education, a topic which is featured in today's conversation. Dat's books include 2015's Understanding Silence and Reticence, Ways of Participating in Second Language Acquisition, and the forthcoming edited collection, Creativity and Innovations in ELT Materials Development, Looking Beyond the Current Design. More information about Dat and his work can be found by following the link in this episode's description. Okay, please enjoy the interview. So I'm here with Dat Bao.
Yes.
So firstly, thank you so much for being in our forum today.
My pleasure.
I'm looking forward to speaking to you today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Could I ask you to briefly introduce yourself and your research?
Yes. My name is Dat Bao. I'm from Monash University. My research is very much connected to my life. I grew up in 6 different countries.
Wow.
I was born in Vietnam, and I moved out when I was 17. I grew up in Thailand. Then I moved to Singapore, then I moved to the US, northern part of the US, New York for some years. And then I moved to England, where I finished off my PhD. Then I moved to Australia. That allowed me to see perspectives in terms of culture. But one of the things I like the most to look at, which makes a big difference among different cultures, is how much people talk and how much people keep silent. And that sparked off one of my first idea about how people use silence in education. One big theme of my research. The second one is creativity, because I do poetry, I do music and other art forms. I put creativity into education as well.
Right.
Thank you, Matthew. Yeah.
So you talked about 2 topics there, silence and creativity.
Exactly.
We're going to cover both of those topics and then try to put them together.
Thank you.
If possible.
We'll try.
So I'd first like to ask you about creativity, if that's okay.
Yes.
And in your book, Poetry for Education, which we have there.
Yes, we have it here.
You mentioned that for a number of different reasons, many students suffer from imagination problems.
Right.
So firstly, why do you think that students may lack the ability, or perhaps maybe it's more the chance to use their imagination fully in the classroom?
Yes.
And how can resources such as yours?
I think the word chance that you actually touch on the answer already. Okay. Imagination exists in everyone. We see things even if they don't exist. But I think students for learning this space to actually make those moments happen. And as far as I know in Australia, sometimes teachers forget this. And they happen to restrict unknowingly students' imagination by maybe getting students to be so aware. I think it happens in Japan as well, of being right and wrong, of the need to be aware of the rules, to be afraid of making errors. And I think in order to escape all of those constructs, we need to take students away from being judged. And one of the 2 I thought I could use is poetry, because poetry allows diversity in thinking.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you are a poet yourself,
yes,
right?
Thank you.
And growing up, I mean, just talking about myself very quickly.
I love to hear about you.
I was always kind of a creative person. Like my dad.
I'm sure you are.
My dad was a photographer.
Yes.
But I went into teaching.
Yes.
And I find that for a lot of people, there's a bit of a misstep between.
Right.
They don't really see this as a creative industry
Right.
when it really is. So
Yes, exactly.
what would you say to that kind of teacher?
I think creativity is important in education, that's for sure, nobody can deny that. But for students to learn creativity, teacher has to be the living evidence of what creativity looks like. And so as a teacher, I believe that if you don't share moments or examples of how you create, students not going to get inspired to take it from there. So it's a bit of interaction. And I definitely agree with you, although you didn't say it explicitly, that teachers are definitely creative human beings.
Yeah. And you talked just going back, you talked about how maybe in Japan, there's a tendency to think of right and wrong.
Yes.
How can we sort of move on this mindset, or maybe even accept the mindset?
Yes.
How can we work with that in a creative
one
way?
of the things is to encourage, but I don't believe in words like people say, please open your mind, or please talk, please stop being shy. It's very easy to say that, but people are not going to respond to a say. So one thing I do is I use tools. Sometimes I use music, I use poetry, and I learned from my colleagues. I had a very good colleague in England. Her name is Jane Spiro. 2 years ago, she came to Japan attending JALT, and she did the Four Corners tour. Jane Spiro, and she's another expert in poetry for education. She shared with me, just before I left, I told her, and she shared with me an activity that I would like to use. It's metaphorical thinking about people you love.
Right.
So she gives students a number of items, but they can invent more, like a building, a dog, a tree, a lake, and then pick someone you love the most, and then connect that with any of those items that you pick. For example, my dad is a tree. He protected me by giving me shades when I'm in trouble. Or my mother is a lake. When I look at her, I see my reflection. And when you bring these types of activities to the classroom and get students to respond to them, they have different ways of responding, and they realize that it wouldn't be wrong when you compare your mother to a lake or father to a tree. There's no right or wrong. They begin to feel, oh, this is it. This is how it feels when you don't care about right and wrong anymore. And I think poetry does a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. So it's kind of encouraging the students to be a bit more figurative and flexible with their language.
Yes. And I think flexibility takes experience to bend yourself away from what was fixed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I often do vocabulary activities.
Great.
Where I say, you have 2 minutes, use these words, any context, any topic.
Yes.
And you can see the students bending the words.
Exactly.
And trying to make them fit. And
definitely.
I guess that's creativity.
I'm sure you did a lot of good things with creativity yourself.
I'm still working on that.
From what you say, yeah.
Going back to your book, you cite research that indicates that there are some benefits of creative education. Could you tell us a little bit about what this research has found, the particular benefits?
Right. Part of it was my own research, but it mainly text-based. I look into the current discourse, what scholars write about creativity, and I collate them together to see what people say. But another thing I learned a lot about, helped me learn a lot about creativity, is research in Australia in many creativity programs. In every school in Australia, they have, in one form or another, a creativity program to help students develop a lot of skills, and they connect creativity with things like problem-solving ability, divergent thinking, curiosity, personal development, and the ability to make connect. I think three of you mentioned today, which is, I really like the idea of connecting the dots. When you see different things and you want to learn in a certain way, you repackage everything you learn in something deliverable. And I think the ability to connect is very important in learning anything. I remember reading Aristotle thousands of years ago in Greek and he said creativity. You recognize creativity in someone when that person is able to connect things that are seemingly unassociated. And
Right.
if they can do it real quick, if you give them like 3 items, maybe a guitar, some money, and maybe a plane, and tell a story from these 3 items.
Yeah.
And if someone can do it straight away, that's creativity.
Right.
So
Yeah.
research has demonstrated how creativity builds a range of skills, and we, based on that, develop activities for the classrooms
Yeah,
to help students achieve what we believe
Yeah.
is important.
And I guess creativity is kind of a mark of fluency as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's some good connections there
Definitely.
too. I was at your talk earlier.
Yes.
Earlier today,
Sure.
and you introduced. I'll start again. Sorry.
No worries.
I'll cough.
My voice is the same as yours, very husky. We could form a rock band now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in your talk earlier, which I attended today,
Thank
you
you.
introduced us to your research into a group of Japanese learners.
Definitely.
Based in Japan, in Melbourne.
In Melbourne.
And they were learning English.
They were learning English.
Japanese learners of English, I
Definitely.
should say. And you described how you think that their English has woken up. You used that term, woken up.
Exactly.
And so how did creativity play a part in?
Exactly. Sometimes creativity, I believe, when you observe how it happens, it has its own core. It's not like pre-planned. Picasso say, if you know exactly what you're going to do, what's the point of doing it? So sometimes creativity happens without planning. It's like people say, live like jazz, improvise. So these people are not students. They are from all paths of life, coming to Australia in order to use English, and they merge with the people, they interact, they learn socially, effectively, because they feel good when they make friends. They learn intellectually because they take notes and they make effort. So they learn in different ways, and they manage to merge these methods of learning together, the affective way, the social, psychological way, and the intellectual, cognitive way, together into a formula. I think that is very creative. But the most creative part about this students' journey of learning is that they don't like classroom, they don't like to work with a teacher, they don't like textbook discipline and being judged. So by getting away from those areas and learn by themselves and struggle, they actually build skills through creativity.
Yeah.
Because what they do is unconventional.
Right.
And I would call unconventionality
Yeah.
an aspect of creativity.
Do you think that the classroom could ever replicate that?
Exactly, that's a very good question. I've been waiting for you to ask me that question. And I think we can replicate. Maybe replicate is not the best word,
Yeah.
but you and I temporarily are using that word. We can do that through efforts. But I believe that when we give students freedom, they will be afraid, especially Japanese students. They're so used to discipline and good organizing manners. So one thing to do is scaffold creativity. Now it sounds very technical, but if you take them steps by step, you can actually make them create something wonderful. I remember a poem I read by Adrian Henry, and the poem is about love. It says, love is feeling cold in the back of vans. Love is a club with only 2 fans. Love is you and love is me. Love is prison and love is free. And that poem strikes me very much as a powerful message that summarizes everything that I've ever felt about love experience. And I brought that to the classroom. It doesn't matter what topic, but when you give it to students, they feel inspired. Oh, this is a beautiful piece of writing. Can I try? And I said, yes, you can. So working with students, we take out the framework from this poem. We say love is feeling, and love is in the, love is, and love is. So there's rhythm, it's like music. So I say, now can you write a similar poem based on this structure?
Yeah, yeah.
They say, but you already write the best poem about love. We can't say, don't worry about love. We come up with our own topic. So we brainstorm and make up a list of things like frustration is, fear is, anger is, things like that. And we write together. The whole class sit down and write together. So each person contributed a word. And I remember the first day I used this poem, many of them choose the topic fear. I don't know if Japanese students like this topic, but in Australia, my students choose this topic, fear. And we wrote a poem about fear, actually.
Right.
So I remember it. We wrote together, and it goes like this. Fear is walking alone in the dark. Fear is submitting your assignment without a mark. Fear is above, and fear is around. Fear is going up, and fear is coming down.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think it's a beautiful piece of writing. When we put the poem together after 10 minutes, students are amazed. They couldn't believe they write such a beautiful poem.
Yeah.
So I believe, like you just mentioned, replicating effort for creativity, my work.
And it's authentic. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
It's personal. It's touching.
This is something I struggle with in my teaching. How authentic am I, and how much of my life should I bring into the classroom?
Exactly.
And I think this is a good way to do that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Teaching and learning can be personal.
Yeah.
As personal as you like.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And one question that came to mind.
Sure.
What do you do with these poems? Are they shared with other learners? Or?
That's a great question. I put them in my silent book because part of my silent book is about how people learn. And people say they learn through creating things in their mind. They come up with an image, they come up with a voice, they come up with an idea, and even dialogue. And so when they do those things, some of them actually write poetry. And there's very touching poetry about someone going to the park and find a child going to the park. I'm glad, did you buy the book? Can I just
sure.
look at this? I want to read something out from the book since you brought it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
There's actually some poem written by students that we publish.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Journal editors, teachers, we all work and help students publish these poems in journal, magazine, and even in academic book to show how people learn. Now there was a poem in Pakistan that really touched my heart. I sent some of my poems to different countries to friends to use for teaching. And there was a poem about senses. A Pakistani teacher gave it to his daughter to read. And the daughter felt inspired. And she read a poem similar to my poem, which is about feeling, using the senses. And this is in her own words. This poem was so beautiful in ideas. I will read it for you. 9-year-old child in Pakistan.
Okay.
She wrote, the title is A Child. One day I walked to a park. I saw a child playing with flowers. Why don't you swing? I asked. I cannot, she replied. I cannot swing or climb the hill. But beauty of nature I can look into my inner eyes because I am blind. So I thought, wow, people can write things like this in their life.
Yeah.
They have a lot of potential.
Yeah. I kind of feel like, for me, I feel like it's there's so much potential in these poems.
Exactly.
It's almost kind of overwhelming and quite scary to open up that world.
Exactly.
I feel like I should.
Exactly. Sometimes like they speak the voice of your heart or something like that to some extent.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. And so this poem you just read there, that was in your book titled Understanding Silence and Reticence. And although we don't have a great deal of time, I'd really like to ask you about this topic, if that's okay.
Sure, I'm happy to.
So this book is all about that phenomenon of reticence and silence. And I guess it is a phenomenon.
Yes.
Could you talk us through these terms in relation to our field? The reason I want to talk to you about this is I've heard a number of presentations at this conference saying they want to stamp out silence and not let the students be silent, and I kind of, that doesn't sit well with me. So
I'm so glad you have this kind of response yourself. I think over the years I realized that people kind of set up too much dichotomy between things like right and wrong, rich and the world divides into rich and poor, smart and stupid. And then part of that dichotomy realm is silence and talk. They tend to think silence seems to be the opposite to talk. And they think you talk to learn because talk is related to interaction. If you are quiet, the interaction is missing. And I think that is not really reasonable.
Yeah.
Not because this is my perspective. It was not my perspective in the first place. But when I was teaching students from around the world, they resist the idea of teachers saying, please talk, please don't be quiet. Because they told the teachers, I enjoy learning through observing others. So I construct my research project on 100 silent students from all over the place. There are 10 Japanese, 10 Korean, 10 Chinese and Filipino, Vietnamese, and Anglo-Australian about how they use their science, how they feel about science. One of the questions I ask them is, remember the best moment in your learning. When the penny dropped, it clicks, you learn the best idea. Did that happen when you were talking, or did that happen when you was not talking? Surprisingly, a large number of respondents said, the best moment when I learn something new and interesting and discover myself is when I'm silent. So I started from there and discovered that they learn a lot through observing, through an inner dialogue. And based on my research, I want to break away from the hierarchy between talk and silence. When teachers frown upon silent learner, I want to ask them to think again. Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and one final question, trying to bring this all together.
Yes.
Do you think that there are any links between creativity and silence? Do you think that more creativity could make learners, again, maybe not, this is not the right way to think of it, but more talkative or more inclined to express more?
Right. I think I have two responses to that. One is, I think it's very important for teachers to be more aware of the value of silence. To be aware that silence is not necessarily the best way to learn anything. That includes creativity. And second is, think about silence as a multidimensional area as much as talk. I discover, and this is the most important finding in my research, that silence and talk are not opposite. Along the continuum of silence and talk on two ends, I can line up a number of different things between. Like further than silence, you have inner talk. You talk to yourself, you hear yourself in the mind, but nobody can hear you. And then further than that, toward talk, you have private talk. Private talk is when you whisper to yourself that only you can hear, but no one can. That's a kind of talk.
Yeah.
And then further than that, inside the talk, when I whisper to you, but I don't want everyone to hear, that's inside the talk. And then public talk. So I realized that this is a continuum that allows teacher to understand that there's no pole, there's no polarization between these two. And if we understand this, we will allow more space to be created for different kinds of learning to happen along the line of this continuum.
Okay.
This continuum.
That's described it really well. That's great.
Thank you, Matthew.
Okay, so we're going to leave it there, Dat. But I could talk to you all day.
Sure, we'll talk over coffee tomorrow or something.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much, Matthew.
Thank you very much for listening today. We'd like to thank Dat for taking part in our forum too. If you'd like to connect with us, feel free to send us an email at teflology@gmail.com, follow us on Twitter @TEFlology, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or visit our website teflology-podcast.com. If you like our show, please consider rating and reviewing us on iTunes or sharing word of our podcast with your colleagues. If you'd like to support our show, please consider purchasing our book, Podcast and Professional Development, a guide for English language teachers, available in ebook or paperback from Amazon. All profits made from book sales will be used to continue making our show. We will return again next week with the third instalment from our forum, an interview with plenary speaker from the conference, Judith O'Loughlin. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back again soon.